The pristine VIP terminal at JFK Airport buzzes with the controlled chaos of international departures. Flight 742 to London waits at Gate 12, its business-class passengers forming an orderly queue behind velvet ropes. The afternoon sun streams through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across marble floors, polished to mirror perfection. Zuri Chen stands third in line, her appearance unremarkable in faded jeans and a simple grey sweater. She carries a worn canvas messenger bag and checks her phone with the casual patience of someone accustomed to travel. Behind her, Karen Mitchell adjusts her designer blazer and clutches a pristine leather handbag, her jewelry catching the light as she shifts impatiently from foot to foot. Officer Bradley makes his routine patrol through the terminal, his sharp eyes scanning the crowd with practiced efficiency. On the wall above them all, a large advertisement for SkyBridge Airways displays the company slogan in bold letters, "Where every journey matters." Karen's gaze falls on Zuri with the subtle assessment of someone cataloging details. She takes in the casual clothing, the simple bag, the absence of obvious luxury markers that typically define her social circle. A frown creases her perfectly made-up features as she leans toward her traveling companion Margaret and whispers just loudly enough for Zuri to hear. "I don't understand how some people afford business class these days," Karen murmurs, her voice carrying the particular tone reserved for conversations meant to be overheard. The standards have really declined, haven't they? Zuri glances back briefly, her expression remaining neutral despite the familiar sting of judgment. She's heard variations of this conversation countless times throughout her career, in boardrooms and airports alike. Her fingers tighten slightly around her phone, but she says nothing. Margaret nods in agreement, emboldened by Karen's commentary. It's probably one of those lottery winner situations, or maybe someone gave her the ticket. You know how that works. Karen's voice grows more confident, her assumptions building momentum. "Oh, please look at her. She's clearly out of place here. I've been flying business class for 20 years, and you can always tell who belongs and who doesn't." She adjusts her Hermès scarf with deliberate precision. "I bet she's never even seen the inside of a first-class cabin before today." The boarding agent announces pre-boarding for passengers requiring assistance, her professional smile masking any awareness of the brewing tension behind her. Zuri steps forward slightly, maintaining her position in line while checking her boarding pass one more time. Officer Bradley notices the growing murmur among the passengers and alters his patrol route to bring him closer to the gate. His training has taught him to watch for signs of disturbance, and he senses the subtle shift in atmosphere without immediately identifying its source. Karen continues her commentary, now speaking more directly toward Zuri's direction. "Excuse me, honey," she calls out, her tone dripping with false sweetness. "I think you might be in the wrong line. The economy boarding is over there." She points dramatically toward the main terminal area. Zuri turns to face her fully, her voice calm and measured. "I'm in the correct line, thank you." "Are you sure?" Karen presses, her smile never wavering. "Business class tickets are quite expensive." "Are you certain someone didn't make a mistake when they gave you your boarding pass?" The assumption hangs in the air like smoke, thick with implications that go far beyond simple concern about seating arrangements. Other passengers begin to notice the exchange, some looking away uncomfortably, while others watch with barely concealed curiosity. Zuri's jaw tightens almost imperceptibly, the only outward sign of her growing irritation. "I'm exactly where I need to be." Officer Bradley approaches the group, initially intending only to maintain order as the boarding process begins. However, Karen's increasingly animated gestures and the subtle tension rippling through the line catches his attention. His experience has taught him to be watchful for anything out of the ordinary, though his definition of ordinary carries its own unconscious biases. "Is there a problem here?" he asks, his voice carrying the authority of his uniform. His eyes move between Karen and Zuri, lingering slightly longer on Zuri as he takes in her casual appearance among the well-dressed business travelers. Karen seizes the opportunity immediately. "Oh, officer, not exactly a problem, just a little confusion, I think." She gestures delicately towards Zuri. I was just trying to help this young lady find the right boarding line. Sometimes people get mixed up about where they're supposed to be. Zuri's expression hardens slightly, her patience beginning to fray. There's no confusion. I have a valid business class ticket for this flight. Officer Bradley extends his hand. May I see your boarding pass and identification, please? Zuri complies without protest, producing her documents from her bag. As Bradley examines them, she finds herself remembering another time, 15 years earlier, when she and her business partner had sat in a cramped garage office, surrounded by rejection letters from 47 different banks. Every loan officer had looked at them the same way this officer was looking at her now, with skepticism that went beyond their business plan to something more fundamental about who they were and whether they belonged in spaces of power and success. Those early days had been filled with 18-hour workdays, living on ramen noodles and determination, slowly building their vision one flight at a time. Zuri had learned to navigate the subtle and not-so-subtle barriers that seemed to multiply whenever she entered rooms where she was the only one who looked like her. Everything appears to be in order, Bradley admits, though his tone suggests this somehow surprises him. Can I ask what type of work you do? Before Zuri can answer, Karen interjects again. I was wondering the same thing. Business class to London isn't cheap. That's easily $8,000. What line of work pays that well these days? A young check-in agent named Lisa works at the nearby counter, processing passengers for an earlier flight. She recognizes Zuri immediately, but finds herself frozen by the unfolding situation. Lisa knows exactly who Zuri is. She's seen her photograph in company communications dozens of times, but the presence of Officer Bradley makes her hesitant to intervene. Speaking up could be seen as interfering with security procedures, something that could cost her the job she desperately needs. Zuri maintains her composure, despite the growing scrutiny. I work in the aviation industry. Oh, like a flight attendant? Karen asks with false innocence. Though I have to say, flight attendant salaries don't usually stretch to business class international travel, unless she lets the implication hang unfinished. Officer Bradley's suspicion deepens, influenced by Karen's persistent questioning and his own unconscious assumptions about who typically occupies business class seats. Could you be more specific about your position in the aviation industry? I work in management, Zuri replies, her voice steady despite the frustration building inside her. Karen laughs, a sound that carries no warmth. Management of what exactly? The cleaning crew? Baggage handling? Her tone makes it clear she finds the idea of Zuri in any significant management role absurd. Lisa finally gathers enough courage to step away from her counter, moving closer to the group. She wants to speak up, to end this humiliating interrogation, but Bradley notices her approach and holds up a hand. This is a security matter, miss. Please maintain your distance. Lisa stops, torn between her knowledge of Zuri's true identity and her fear of professional consequences. She retreats to her station, pulling out her phone to contact her supervisor, hoping someone with more authority can intervene before this situation spirals further out of control. Karen suddenly lets out a sharp gasp, her hand flying to her side where an expensive Hermès handbag had been resting against her hip. My bag, she exclaims, her voice rising to attract attention from nearby passengers. Where's my Hermès bag? She spins around frantically, her eyes scanning the immediate area before fixing on Zuri with growing suspicion. It was right here a moment ago. I set it down when I was getting my boarding pass ready. Zuri looks around as well, genuinely trying to help locate the missing item. I haven't seen any bag. When did you last have it? Just now. Karen's voice grows more accusatory. You were the only person standing close enough to take it. She points directly at Zuri, her finger trembling with either genuine distress or calculated performance. I saw you looking at it earlier. You kept glancing over at my things. Officer Bradley immediately shifts into investigative mode, his demeanor becoming more serious. Ma'am, are you saying you witnessed this lady take your bag? Karen hesitates for just a moment, then nods firmly. I can't say I saw her actually take it, but she was definitely interested in it. She kept looking over here, and when I turned away to answer a phone call, she moved closer. Now my bag is gone. Zuri's eyes flash with anger for the first time. That's absolutely false. I have not touched your bag or anyone else's property. Then where is it? Karen demands, her voice carrying the righteous indignation of someone who believes their social status provides automatic credibility. It was a limited edition Hermès Birkin bag worth $50,000. It doesn't just disappear. Officer Bradley studies both women carefully. Karen's expensive clothing and obvious wealth give her words a weight that Zuri's simple appearance cannot match in his mind. Ma'am, he addresses Zuri, I'm going to need you to step aside for questioning. This is ridiculous, Zuri protests. I haven't stolen anything. This woman is making false accusations. If you're innocent, then cooperating with the investigation will clear everything up quickly, Bradley responds, his tone suggesting that Zuri's protests only make her look more guilty. Karen seizes the momentum. Officer, I think you should search her bag. She could have hidden it or passed it to an accomplice. She looks around dramatically. These people often work in groups. The phrase, "these people," hangs in the air like a toxic cloud. Zuri feels the familiar burn of rage that she's learned to suppress through years of navigating similar situations. Her hands clench into fists at her sides, but she forces her voice to remain level. I want to be very clear about what's happening here, Zuri says, addressing both Bradley and the growing crowd of onlookers. This woman has made an accusation with no evidence, based on nothing more than her assumptions about who I am and whether I belong in this space. Bradley, influenced by Karen's confidence and his own biases, doesn't fully hear Zuri's words. Please open your bag for inspection. Zuri complies, unzipping her canvas messenger bag to reveal a laptop, several manila folders filled with documents, a water bottle, and basic personal items. No designer handbag is visible. She could have stashed it somewhere else, Karen insists, or given it to someone. I want a full search. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with me for additional questioning, Bradley tells Zuri. Standard procedure when there's been a theft reported. I haven't stolen anything, Zuri repeats, but she follows Bradley toward the security office, acutely aware of the stares and whispers of other passengers. The humiliation burns through her, not just because of the false accusation, but because of how quickly everyone assumed Karen's version of events was true. Lisa watches from behind her counter, her phone pressed to her ear as she frantically tries to reach someone in management who might have the authority to stop this injustice. She knows exactly who Zuri is, and she knows this accusation is not just false, but absurd. But her calls keep going to voicemail, and Zuri is being led away for questioning based on nothing more than prejudice and assumption. The flight to London continues its boarding process, other passengers stepping around the drama as if it's merely an inconvenience to their travel plans. In the sterile security office, Officer Bradley gestures for Zuri to take a seat across from a metal desk. The room smells of disinfectant and carries the oppressive weight of institutional authority. Zuri sits with the composed dignity of someone who has weathered storms before, though her jaw remains tight with controlled frustration. I need to ask you some questions about your background and how you can afford business-class travel, Bradley begins, pulling out a notepad. His approach suggests he's already reached conclusions about Zuri's guilt. Karen has followed them into the office, uninvited but unchallenged. She positions herself near the door like a prosecutor ensuring justice is served. I want to be here to identify my property when you find it, she announces. Zuri looks directly at Bradley. I'd like to contact my attorney before answering any questions. That's your right, Bradley acknowledges, but cooperation would help resolve this matter more quickly. We're just trying to understand the situation. Through the office window, Zuri can see her flight's gate, where passengers continue boarding the plane she should be on. She thinks about the meetings in London, the merger discussions that could affect thousands of jobs, the carefully orchestrated schedule that this false accusation is destroying. Let me ask you directly, Bradley continues. How does someone in your position afford an $8,000 business-class ticket to London? The question stings not just for its implication, but for its assumption that Zuri must justify her presence in spaces others take for granted. "I've already told you, I work in aviation management." Karen scoffs audibly. "Management of what? Be specific." "I work for an airline company in an executive capacity," Zuri responds, keeping her voice level despite the mounting pressure. "Which airline?" Bradley asks, his pen poised over his notepad. "SkyBridge Airways." Karen's eyebrows shoot up mockingly. "Oh, so you work for the airline we're flying today? How convenient. What's your position there?" "Supervisor of janitorial services." Zuri's eyes flash dangerously, but she maintains her composure. "I am in senior management." "Senior management," Karen repeats with obvious disbelief. "Like what? Assistant to the assistant manager?" "Because, honey, I've been flying with airlines for decades, and senior management doesn't dress like they're heading to a garage sale." Bradley's radio crackles with routine security updates. He responds briefly, then returns his attention to Zuri. "I'm going to need to verify your employment. Can you provide contact information for your supervisor?" "I don't have a supervisor in the traditional sense," Zuri replies carefully. This response raises Bradley's suspicions further. Karen pounces on the perceived inconsistency. "See? Her story keeps changing. First she's in management, now she doesn't have a supervisor. That's exactly what someone would say if they were lying." Zuri takes a deep breath, feeling the weight of years of similar encounters. She remembers board meetings where venture capitalists questioned her qualifications despite her MIT MBA and proven track record. She recalls conferences where she was mistaken for catering staff or assumed to be someone's assistant rather than the keynote speaker. "I'm calling for backup to conduct a more thorough search," Bradley announces, reaching for his radio. "And I want to review security camera footage from the gate area." "That's an excellent idea," Karen agrees enthusiastically. "The cameras will show exactly what happened." What Karen doesn't remember, in her focus on creating drama, is that an hour earlier she had placed her precious Hermès bag in a personal storage locker when she went to the restroom. The stress of her delayed flight and her agitation about sharing business class with someone she deemed unworthy had clouded her memory of this simple action. A second officer arrives, along with a female security agent, to assist with any physical search that might be necessary. The room suddenly feels crowded with authority figures, all focused on Zuri, as if she's already been tried and convicted. "We're going to need you to remove your shoes and jacket," the female agent instructs. "Standard procedure for theft investigations." Zuri complies silently, her dignity intact despite the humiliating process. She thinks about her daughter, who's away at college, and wonders what lessons this moment might teach about persistence in the face of prejudice. Bradley's radio crackles again. This time it's a call from the terminal supervisor requesting his location. Lisa's desperate phone calls have finally reached someone with authority, but the message doesn't immediately register with Bradley as he focuses on what he believes is a routine theft case. "Officer Bradley," the voice on the radio says, "please respond to your current location immediately." "I'm conducting an investigation in Security Office B," Bradley responds. "Theft case in progress. Sir, you need to stop any questioning immediately and await further instructions." Bradley looks confused. "I'm in the middle of processing a suspected thief. The victim is here with positive identification." Karen interjects. "Don't let them intimidate you, officer. I know exactly what I saw, and my bag is worth $50,000. This is grand theft." The radio crackles once more. "Officer Bradley, the terminal director is en route to your location. Cease all questioning until he arrives." Zuri allows herself a small, knowing smile. She recognizes the tone of authority in that radio call, the urgency that suggests someone has finally connected the dots about who she really is. Bradley hesitates, torn between completing what he sees as his duty and following direct orders from his supervisors. Karen senses the shift in momentum and becomes more aggressive. "You can't let them scare you off," she insists. "These people always try to play the system. They cry discrimination whenever they get caught. Don't fall for it." Zuri finally speaks, her voice carrying a new note of authority. "Officer Bradley, I strongly suggest you follow your supervisor's instructions. And Ms. Mitchell, I recommend you think very carefully about continuing to make false accusations and inflammatory statements. Don't you threaten me, Karen snaps. I know exactly what you are and what you've done. The room falls silent as Zuri stands slowly, her entire demeanor shifting. For the first time since this ordeal began, she allows a hint of her true authority to show through. Ms. Mitchell, you have no idea who I am or what I've done. But you're about to find out. Bradley's radio sounds again. Terminal Director James Wright is approaching your location. All personnel are to maintain positions until his arrival. Through the office window, Zuri can see a tall figure in a business suit walking rapidly toward the security area, flanked by 2 other officials. The cavalry is finally arriving, but Zuri wonders if the damage to her faith in the system can ever be fully repaired. Karen, oblivious to the gathering storm, continues her attack. I don't care who shows up. Theft is theft, and I'm not backing down. Zuri meets her gaze steadily. No, Ms. Mitchell, you're absolutely right. Theft is theft, and making false accusations is also a crime. So is discrimination. We'll see which laws were actually broken here today. The security office door opens with the force of authority as James Wright, Terminal Director of JFK Airport, strides into the room. His face is ashen, his usual professional composure cracked by the urgency of the situation. Behind him follow 2 other officials, the head of airport security and a representative from the Airline liaison office. Officer Bradley, step away from Ms. Chen immediately, Wright commands, his voice carrying the weight of someone accustomed to absolute authority within these walls. Bradley looks confused, his notepad still in hand. Sir, I'm processing a theft complaint. This woman has been accused of stealing a $50,000 handbag from this passenger. He gestures toward Karen, who straightens proudly as if vindicated by the arrival of higher authorities. Wright's expression grows even more grave. Officer Bradley, put down your notepad and listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you. Zuri remains seated, her hands folded calmly in her lap, though her eyes show the first hint of satisfaction she's allowed herself since this ordeal began. She knows what's coming, and part of her feels a grim anticipation for the moment of revelation. Sir, Karen interjects, I'm glad you're here. This officer was doing his job properly, but some people called to try to interfere. I demand that you support your security staff and prosecute this thief to the full extent of the law. Wright turns to Karen with a look that could freeze flames. Ms. Mitchell, I suggest you remain silent until I've finished explaining the situation. He then addresses the room at large. Ms. Chen, on behalf of JFK Airport and our security staff, I offer my deepest and most sincere apologies for this completely unacceptable situation. Bradley's confusion deepens. Sir, I don't understand. We have a clear complaint of theft. Officer Bradley, Wright continues, his voice rising slightly. You have just spent the last hour interrogating Zuri Chen, Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of SkyBridge Airways, the very airline whose terminal space you're standing in right now. The silence in the room is absolute. Bradley's notepad slips from his fingers and clatters to the floor. Karen's face drains of color as the implications begin to register. Wright continues relentlessly. Ms. Chen isn't just any CEO. She personally designed the security protocols you've been supposedly following today. She wrote the training manual you studied when you took this job, the sensitivity training program for airport personnel. She developed that too, specifically to prevent situations exactly like this one. Zuri finally stands, her transformation from suspected criminal to revealed authority figure complete. When she speaks, her voice carries the unmistakable tone of someone accustomed to boardrooms and command decisions. Officer Bradley, she begins, in the past hour, you've violated at least 7 procedures outlined in the security handbook. You conducted an interrogation based on an accusation with no corroborating evidence. You allowed the accuser to participate in and influence your investigation. You made assumptions about guilt based on appearance rather than facts. Bradley stammers, I was just following protocol. No, Zuri corrects firmly. You are following bias. There's a difference, and it's one you're going to learn. She turns to address Karen directly. Ms. Mitchell, I believe you've been looking for this. Wright nods to one of his assistants, who produces a distinctive Hermès handbag from a security bag. Karen's eyes widen in shock. Where? How did you? Security camera footage shows you placing this bag in personal locker number 247 at 14:15 hours when you went to the restroom. Wright explains coldly. You forgot you'd stored it there in your enthusiasm to create this situation. Zuri steps closer to Karen, her voice deadly calm. You didn't lose your bag, Ms. Mitchell. You wanted an excuse to have me removed from business class. You saw someone you felt didn't belong in your space, and you decided to do something about it. Karen's composure cracks completely. I thought I was confused about where I put it. You weren't confused, Zuri continues. You made a calculated decision to accuse me of theft, even when you couldn't find your bag. Instead of looking for it or asking for help finding it, you immediately assumed I had stolen it. Why do you think that was? The question hangs in the air like an accusation. Karen looks around the room desperately, but finds no allies among the faces staring back at her. Wright pulls out his tablet and begins reading. Ms. Mitchell, our records show you've filed 14 complaints with various airlines in the past 18 months. Every single complaint involved what you termed inappropriate passengers in premium cabins. Every passenger you complained about was a person of color. Zuri nods grimly. I am familiar with Ms. Mitchell's complaint history. What you might not know, Ms. Mitchell, is that SkyBridge Airways tracks patterns of discrimination complaints. We flag passengers who consistently target others based on race, and we take action accordingly. Bradley finally finds his voice. Ms. Chen, what's going to happen to me? Zuri considers the question carefully. Officer Bradley, you're going to receive additional training, comprehensive bias recognition training, de-escalation techniques, and proper investigation protocols. I'm going to personally design your retraining curriculum because this can never happen again. She turns to Wright. James, I want a complete review of today's security footage, not just for evidence, but for training purposes. Every security officer in this airport needs to see how quickly unconscious bias can turn routine procedures into civil rights violations. Karen makes one last desperate attempt to salvage the situation. This is all a misunderstanding. I never meant to accuse anyone falsely. I was just worried about my property. Zuri's response cuts through Karen's excuses like a blade. Ms. Mitchell, the only misunderstanding here was yours. You misunderstood who I am. You misunderstood your right to judge others based on appearance, and you misunderstood the consequences of your actions. Wright adds, Ms. Mitchell, you are permanently banned from flying with SkyBridge Airways. This decision is final and non-negotiable. Karen's face goes white. You can't do that. I need to fly for business. This is discrimination. Zuri almost... The irony. Ms. Mitchell, this isn't discrimination. This is accountability. There's a difference, though I understand why you might find that concept unfamiliar. The revelation is complete. The power dynamic has shifted entirely. The woman who minutes ago was treated as a suspected criminal now stands revealed as one of the most powerful figures in the aviation industry, holding the careers and futures of everyone in the room in her hands. Zuri moves to the security desk and picks up the phone, her actions deliberate and measured. I'm calling my head of security to review every aspect of what happened today, she announces. This incident will become a case study in how quickly bias can corrupt proper procedures. Karen watches in growing horror as Zuri speaks with the authority of someone accustomed to making decisions that affect thousands of employees and millions of passengers. Wait, Karen pleads. Surely we can work something out. I made a mistake, but banning me from flying seems excessive. Zuri ends her call and turns to face Karen fully. Ms. Mitchell, let me help you understand the scope of your mistake. SkyBridge Airways operates 647 daily flights across 43 countries. We have code share agreements with 12 major international airlines. When I ban you from our service, that information gets shared across the entire network. The color drains from Karen's face as the implications sink in. I mean that your pattern of discriminatory behavior, documented across multiple airlines, combined with today's false accusation, makes you a liability that no airline wants to assume. Zuri explains calmly. Your traveling days in premium cabins are effectively over. Wright adds, Ms. Mitchell, making false accusations against other passengers is a federal crime when it occurs in an airport. The FBI takes these matters very seriously, especially when there's evidence of racial motivation. Karen begins to panic. No, this is all blown out of proportion. I just made an honest mistake about my bag. Zuri pulls out her own phone and shows Karen the screen. This is security footage from the past 2 hours. Would you like to watch yourself deliberately placing your bag in the locker, then forgetting about it when you saw an opportunity to cause problems for me? The footage is damning. It shows Karen clearly and deliberately storing her bag, then later looking directly at Zuri with calculation in her eyes before approaching Officer Bradley with her false complaint. The footage also shows you making several clearly racist comments. Zuri continues. Comments about these people and assumptions about how I could afford my ticket. All recorded, all documented, all permanent. Bradley stands frozen, watching his own career potentially crumble as Zuri reviews his actions with the clinical precision of someone who understands exactly how badly he's failed. Officer Bradley. Zuri addresses him directly. You have a choice to make. You can learn from this experience and become a better officer, or you can continue operating with the same biases that led to today's disaster. But understand this. I personally review every discrimination complaint filed against airport security. Your name will be on my desk if this ever happens again. Zuri turns back to Karen. As for you, Ms. Mitchell, I want you to understand something important. The reason you're being banned isn't just because of today. It's because of a pattern of behavior that makes flying unsafe and uncomfortable for other passengers. She walks to the window overlooking the terminal. Do you see all those travelers out there? They come from every background, every economic level, every race and nationality. My job is to make sure they all feel welcome and safe when they choose to fly with us. People like you make that impossible. Karen makes one final desperate plea. I'll pay any fine, make any donation, take any class you want. I just need to be able to fly for my work. Please. Zuri's expression doesn't soften. Ms. Mitchell, you had every opportunity to treat me with basic human dignity. Instead, you chose to fabricate a crime to remove me from a space you felt I didn't deserve to occupy. Those choices have consequences. Wright steps forward. Ms. Mitchell, airport security will escort you to retrieve your belongings and see you out of the terminal. Your return ticket on SkyBridge Airways has been cancelled and refunded. What about my meeting in London? Karen asks desperately. That's no longer our concern, Zuri replies. Perhaps other airlines will accept your business, though I suspect word travels fast in this industry. As if to emphasize Zuri's point, Wright's phone buzzes with a message. He reads it and looks up grimly. Ms. Mitchell, I've just received word that 3 other major airlines have already flagged your frequent flyer accounts, pending review of today's incident. Karen's face crumples as she realizes the full extent of her downfall. Her attempt to humiliate someone she saw as beneath her has instead exposed her own character and destroyed her ability to travel as she's accustomed. Zuri watches Karen's reaction with no visible satisfaction, only the grim determination of someone ensuring that consequences match actions. Officer Bradley, I expect a formal written report about today's events on my desk within 48 hours. Include your assessment of what went wrong and how you plan to prevent it from happening again. Bradley nods mutely, still processing the magnitude of his error. Ms. Mitchell, Zuri says finally, I hope you use this time to reflect on how your actions affect others. Real change requires real accountability. Airport security arrives to escort Karen from the premises, her earlier arrogance replaced by the devastating realization that her prejudices have cost her far more than she ever imagined possible. As the office clears and the immediate crisis passes, Zuri settles back into her chair, her composure returning to the calm professionalism that has guided her through 15 years of building an airline empire. The anger and frustration she felt during the interrogation has transformed into something more purposeful, a determination to ensure this experience serves a greater good. "Officer Bradley," she begins, her voice gentle but firm, "I want you to understand that what happened today wasn't entirely your fault. You were trained in procedures, but you weren't trained to recognize how bias influences those procedures." Bradley shifts uncomfortably. "Ma'am, I know I made mistakes." Zuri raises a hand to stop him. "The mistake wasn't just yours. It belongs to a system that doesn't adequately prepare its people to serve everyone equally. You responded to unconscious programming that told you certain people belong in certain places and others don't." She stands and walks to the window, looking out at the diverse crowd of travelers moving through her terminal. 15 years ago, I sat in a garage with my business partner, surrounded by rejection letters from banks that wouldn't even consider our loan application. Not because our business plan was flawed, but because 2 young women of color asking for millions of dollars didn't fit their picture of successful entrepreneurs. Zuri turns back to Bradley. "Every success I've achieved has been shadowed by moments like today. Moments when someone decided I didn't belong, couldn't afford something, or must have gotten where I am through means other than merit and hard work." She pauses, choosing her words carefully. "But here's what I've learned. Anger alone changes nothing. The only thing that creates real change is using these experiences to build something better." Bradley asks quietly, "What happens now?" "Now we learn," Zuri replies. "I'm going to work with airport management to completely redesign bias training for all security personnel. Not just classroom sessions, but practical exercises that help people recognize their assumptions before they act on them." She addresses James Wright. "James, I want mandatory quarterly reviews of any complaints involving passenger treatment. And I want exit interviews with every passenger who files a discrimination complaint to understand patterns we might be missing." Zuri picks up her bag, checking her watch. "My flight has already departed, but that's not the important thing. The important thing is making sure this doesn't happen to the next person who doesn't look like what someone expects to see in business class." As she prepares to leave, Zuri turns to Bradley one final time. "Officer, I'm not angry with you anymore, but I am holding you accountable for being better. That's not punishment. It's an opportunity to become the kind of officer who protects everyone's dignity, not just their safety." The room falls silent as Zuri's words sink in. She has transformed a moment of humiliation into a teaching opportunity, her response revealing the kind of leadership that builds lasting change rather than temporary satisfaction. Zuri pauses at the security office door, turning to address everyone present with the commanding presence that has made her one of the most influential figures in aviation. Her voice carries beyond the room as if speaking to a much larger audience. Every day in airports, offices, restaurants, and countless other spaces, people make assumptions about who belongs and who doesn't. Today was just one example that happened to involve someone with the power to respond. She looks directly ahead, her gaze seeming to pierce through the walls of the small office. But what about the people who don't have that power? What about the travelers, employees, and customers who face these same assumptions without the authority to demand accountability? Zuri's voice takes on the tone of someone issuing a challenge. The next time you see someone being treated differently because of how they look, ask yourself, will you speak up or will you assume someone else will handle it? She smiles slightly, the expression carrying both warmth and steel. And remember, the person you're watching being discriminated against might just be the person who signs your paycheck. In business, as in life, appearances can be very deceiving. Zuri walks out of the security office with the confident stride of someone who has just reminded the world that power doesn't always announce itself, but it never forgets an injustice. Behind her, Officer Bradley stares at the security handbook on his desk, seeing it with entirely new eyes, while somewhere in the terminal, the next business-class passenger boards their flight without anyone questioning whether they belong there. The camera would fade on the SkyBridge Airways advertisement still hanging on the terminal wall, Zuri's professional photograph smiling down at the gate where this entire drama began, the irony finally visible to everyone who bothered to look up.